Hello, everyone. Today is June 10th, and this is the Cluster API Provider Azure office hours. Cluster API Provider Azure is a sub-project of SIG Cluster Lifecycle. As always, please make sure you follow the CNCF Code of Conduct. Be respectful to everyone else, and if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand and I'll make sure you get called on. If you have any agenda topics that you'd like to or any topics that you'd like to discuss, please add them to the agenda on the Google Doc. And if you can, also please add your name to the attendee list so we can keep track of who's coming to these. All right, so let's get started. I don't think we have anyone new here, so I'll skip over the welcome. Let's go straight into the milestone review. Okay, so we're getting really close. There are a few that were still remaining that got closed since last time, mostly the Windows rename of nodes. So that's done. And then I think we have multi-tenancy support for AKS, which is over close to the finish line. There's a PR that Shyam has been working on, and there's it's currently being reviewed, and there's end-to-end tests that Shyam added, so that's great. And then I think the machine PR merged yesterday. I know David added an agenda item to discuss it afterwards, so let's hold until then. But I think we're in a good place, at least in terms of the release. And then the last two ones are not, I don't think there's any active PRs. This one is almost done except for the AKS service, the managed cluster service. So I think those two are probably not going to make it till before the release, but I think that's okay. We have most of the other services done here, and this is just a refactor, so it can be done anytime. Any questions on the milestone, on the release, or anything that is not in here that should be in here that anyone is aware of?
Can we take a quick look at like 05X in case something there is like breaking anything that we can?
Yep, we can. Absolutely. So actually this one is currently being worked on. There's a PR. Okay, let's go from the top, sorry. So secure sensitive bootstrap data that we decided to punt based on the work that's going on in the secure kubelet proposal in Cluster API. So that will happen as part of 05X, but it won't be in the v1 alpha 4 release. It's still at the proposal stage. Allow multiple subnets of role node. That one, there's a PR open. It's still a work in progress, I believe. So it's not quite ready to merge, but it's an additive feature, so it should be okay to merge after the 0.0 release. Decouple infrastructure resource from machine controller. Oh, that actually is done, so I should close that. That's the one that is that was implemented in Cluster API for the it's called externally managed infrastructure, and that we were able to take in as part of the Cluster API dependency updates. And we were able to add the externally managed predicate to the controller so that we skip over any externally managed clusters in our reconciler. Parallel reconciliation of Azure resources. I don't know the status on that one. Chaim, do you want to give an update?
I haven't made any changes after the discussion we did during last office hours, so yeah. I haven't had the time to work on it, but I'm not sure like if it's really important to get it to 05.
Yeah, I think this one we actually want to get it after 0.50 just because it's like going to be a big refactor and restructure of the code, and I'd rather not merge something that big this close to the release. So that's fine for now. Any questions or opinions on this or anything so far?
All good so far.
Change default branch to main. That one I propose we take care of that as soon as we cut the release. So like right after we cut the release, we change the branch over, just so that it doesn't cause any issues in terms of like tests, because we know that there's probably going to be some tests that break, and hopefully we get all of them the first time, but it's possible that we don't. So just to limit risk of our getting our test signal corrupted right before the release, I think it's better if we wait until right after. But I'd like this to be done as soon as possible after the release is out. All good? Okay, Gen 2 support. Nader, do you want to talk about that actually? Or I think you also have an item after, but.
Yeah, it's okay, I can mention it now. So after I did a PR, basically David found, and I tested that if you're using Gen 2 image, you don't have to do anything because Azure will take care of it and create a Gen 2 VM. So I closed that PR, but I didn't close the issue in case we want to later add some validation. Right now, we don't publish Gen 2 images. So there's nothing to use there. If we do, I made a PR and image builder to kind of fix a couple of small things to publish them because it wasn't working. But once we publish that, and we might need a new PR here to like maybe make that the default if we want to add some kind of validation or stuff like that. So I didn't close the issue, but we do have Gen 2 VM support as soon as we start publishing these images.
Okay, let's maybe circle back on the whole Gen 2 topic, but yeah. I think for now, in terms of milestone planning,
yeah, we're good.
This is good here, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then this one, actually, I will assign myself and check on it because I don't think we've taken that in yet. But this was just a preventative issue because we were told there was going to be a breaking change in this network API version in the Azure SDK. So just need to check back and see where we're at for that. And then the last one is this one, favorites issue. This one's been around for a while, and actually, I think there's nothing else to be done here. So this, for context, for anyone who's watching who doesn't know what this was an issue with the cloud provider where the Azure cloud provider was actually going through the wrong code path when trying to provision load balancers for services in a all VMs cluster. And it was actually not refreshing the cache of like the VMs in the cluster, in the resource group, which was causing it to not see VMs for the nodes and try to go and treat it like a VMSS, which it wasn't. So this has been an issue for a while. We actually made a fix in the cloud provider code, which was merged. And it was later backported to the in-tree cloud provider. So the fix was made in out-of-tree cloud provider, and it was backported to in-tree cloud provider. That PR has merged. It did not qualify as a cherry pick, unfortunately. So it's right now in the pipeline for getting released with the next minor release, which is going to be 122. So that will be completely fixed as soon as 122 is out, at least in versions 122 and above. And it's already fixed in external cloud provider for the version that is currently being used in the templates. So I think I'm just going to keep that open for awareness in case anyone runs into it until 122 is out, and then maybe write up a comment once 122 is out and close it, if that sounds good to everyone.
Sounds good.
It does. Maybe we should add the description to the description to say the workaround is use the out-of-tree cloud provider.
Yeah, I think that's been commented, but maybe I can add a clear note in the description. Yeah, so it's at the top. But yeah, this is, yeah.
Yeah, you have to read down to get to that.
Yeah. I'll update that after the meeting. Okay. Cool. So update this and then close this one. Anything else? Any other issues that we're tracking anywhere or need to be paying attention to? Okay, I think we're in a pretty good place for the release. Honestly, we're just waiting for Cluster API to release at this point. And then we should also, so we just merged the 0.4.0 beta 0 Cluster API dependency yesterday. So the tests are currently running with that beta release. So hopefully we get to bake that in for a little bit. And then we'll, as soon as the actual release is out, we'll take that in and then run the test for a little bit, maybe a week or something like that to make sure we don't find any issues, and then we'll cut the release, if that sounds good. Cool. Maybe we should take a brief look at the test grid dashboard just to make sure. I did see some flakiness in the full end-to-end test suite, but in terms of V1 Alpha 4 or the main branch periodic tests, the conformance, regular conformance is looking good. The conformance on Kubernetes main had a bit of issues here because of the Viper config thing that got removed from the Kubernetes repo. And I think there are 2 provisioning flakes here. I think those were Coda issues, but I need to double check. But those were like the cluster didn't provision. In terms of like conformance, we're all passing in the last recent runs. And then I think periodic CAPI, yeah, so this is the CAPI end-to-end test. So some flakes here. So I think it'd be good to investigate, especially this machine health checks one, which has been flaky, but I think it's also flaky in CAPI. So it might be just the test itself. But yeah, we should double check. And then end-to-end full. This one has been also very flaky. I think this one is the same one we're seeing in PRs that flakes regularly. The Windows VMSS one, I think that's the service flake, or at least it has been. Actually, that was a provisioning flake, never mind. Okay, something to investigate as well before the release. I think that's all in terms of periodic tests. This one is a pool job? Oh, are we, James, are you on the call? Do you know if, is there a plan to make this into a periodic job now that the PR has merged, the Windows upstream tests?
Yeah, so I'm working on getting the CI builds. I think we'll turn those into periodic jobs once we're complete there.
Okay, sounds good. Cool. Any questions on tests or comments, concerns?
How can we get some ownership over who should do the investigation on the flakes, of the provisioning flakes and the machine health check tests? So somebody wants to step up.
I can take it, but provision, like I can investigate the test flakiness, but if it's provisioning, I don't know how to.
Yeah, I can also help. Maybe like let's start by triaging and at least seeing what's provisioning, what's not, and then maybe opening issues for the ones that have like recurrent flakes that we haven't seen before. And then I can help you investigate those.
Okay.
Thanks, Nader. Cool. Thanks for bringing that up, Craig. All right. Are we good to?
I have a question, not exactly related to the reasons, but like I know there was like a new in CAPI 0319 and stuff. Do we need to get that in our 04 branch?
Yeah, that's actually a good point. We do. So that's probably so 0318 has a few different fixes, so we definitely want that. And then 0319 was shortly released after because there's a small issue in the updates to the cube test or to the conformance test suite in the test framework to deal with that Viper config being removed that actually had like a missing pointer reference. So it actually broke the conformance tests for a little bit. And so that's probably why we're seeing, where is it? Conformance, Kate's main 103 here. Oh, wait, so sorry, that's PR, periodic. Okay, this one. Yeah, so this has been not running for a while. And I suspect there's something else going on that's not just that. I don't know if that's going to be enough to fix it, but yes, we can't even investigate until we at least fix that because it's not running the conformance with the right flags. So yeah, we need to get 319 in and then check if that fixes it, and if not, investigate why it's not provisioning. I think my guess is probably something in 318 is going to fix it, because this is like the alpha 3 branch running on Kate's, on like Kubernetes master. And that's been failing. I think the provisioning is failing because something in v1 alpha 3 needed fixing for a change in Kubernetes master. Because if you look at the equivalent conformance tests for not Kubernetes master, that's passing. So I think it's an issue with like specifically deploying Kubernetes from the target head branch.
Yeah, I can do a PR to update our release 04 with the latest copy and then go from there.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks. Cool. Let's move on. So Gen 2 images. So yeah, I guess we kind of already sort of covered that, but is there anything else that you wanted to add, Nader?
I just wanted to ask if we want to start publishing that with our images from, I guess at some point we need to do that. I don't know what the priority on that is.
My point of view a while back, and I still feel this way, is that at some point we should just switch over to Gen 2 only. I don't know of any users that would be impacted by no longer supporting Gen 1, but maybe maybe I'm missing something. I think the issue is just about availability in different regions, if I remember correctly.
So there's also VM sizes that only support Gen 1, correct? I think Gen 2 supports a limited subset of the VM sizes available.
Most of them, though, seem to be supported by Gen 2. Like the list was pretty long.
Sorry, most of them seem to or don't seem to be supported?
No, do support Gen 2.
Oh, okay.
Most of the machine sizes now.
Yeah, I think I'm with Craig here that we should probably just switch over at some point. I don't know if publishing both side by side is a good idea in terms of like maintenance cost, and unless there's like a really good reason that some users are going to want Gen 1 and some are going to want Gen 2, especially for testing and for like initial.
Users can always, they're not supposed to use these images for their own stuff anyway.
Exactly.
Right? So if we only publish Gen 2 and use it, and if they want Gen 1, they can build their own images, which is what they're supposed to do anyway.
So maybe we should do a quick analysis of our quick check of if we were to switch all our images to Gen 2 today, is there anything that we're doing in the tests, like in the CI suite, that would break? Any like special VM sizes we're using that wouldn't work, like GPU, for example, or things like that. I think maybe that's a good first step to check that. And then if we're confident that we're ready to support Gen 2 today, then maybe we can start working on that.
Okay, I can update that in the issue. I'll go through all the sizes we use and update the issue.
Cool. Matt?
I don't think we've done the work in Image Builder for Windows to do Gen 2. So
that's a good point. Okay, that's
sorry, that's true.
Track that.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, we should make sure that if someone uses some oddball VM size but uses our future default Gen 2 images, they get a nice clear error so that they know what to do, which I would hope so, but you never know with Azure stuff.
Yep. Any other comments or questions on Gen 2 images? What I was going to say earlier is if we're not going to do this right away, we should at least like have some mention of Gen 2 in the docs so that users know that they can do this on their own. Like if they want to publish a Gen 2 image, that it should just work. And then maybe we should publish at least one for testing. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but or we just wait for the cutover. That might be easier. Okay.
That was my faith. It just seems like unnecessary expense.
Okay, sounds good. All right, let's talk about machine pools. David.
Hey, everybody. So the PR that's linked there has landed, thankfully. Thank you for all of the reviews and feedback. And I promise I will never put one out that big again. In there, so quick recap. The features that landed in there are Azure Machine Pool machines. So Azure Machine Pools are now composed of Azure Machine Pool machines, which have their own state and their own life cycle. That means that rolling updates, the rolling update strategy is now implemented. So you can provide max surge and max unavailable, and that will be respected by the controller. And then delete policy is also respected. So you can specify oldest, newest, and random, and we'll delete machines in that order. So if you say you pick newest or you pick oldest is default with a rolling update with a max surge of 1 and a delete policy of oldest. As you update to a new version of Kubernetes in the machine pool, you will see a new machine pool created. It will surge 1. You will see then after that machine pool gets to succeeded and ready, you'll see the oldest one removed from the list. When that one is gone, the new machine pool will be created and you'll have 3 again. And then the final one will be removed from the list. And then you'll be left only with, say, the 2 that were there. So that functionality is there. It's ready to go. Hope people give it some try and put some miles on it before we get to release. There is 2 items that need to be completed before this is like totally awesome. We need to put in, or I'll open up a PR to do coordinate drain. So right now we are not coordinate draining. We are simply just deleting that node. So that's not safe. We'll get in coordinate drain, and then also there's an issue for documentation. So both of those can go in, and I think it'll be ready to go. Does anybody have any questions?
In terms of next steps, so the thing that's still missing, the big thing that's still missing for machine pool today is cluster autoscaler integration.
Yep.
So we talked a little bit in the proposal about, like how to like get this back into CAPI. At some point, have your thoughts on that changed, or what's your current evaluation of what needs to be done?
Thoughts haven't changed. We're just close to this release in CAPI. So I didn't feel compelled to go open up the CAP yet. It's definitely something that should go in. I don't see anything that has changed to lead me to think that we shouldn't do it. Do you?
No, but I guess, yeah, if it's going to need a CAP, that means we're not going to get that until the next minor,
Yeah.
which is not going to be for a while, although it is experimental, so we might be able to negotiate getting that in earlier. But yeah, I think that's the missing thing before moving machine pools out of experimental.
I agree.
And then I guess we should also, I don't think it's gonna work, but just in case, we should probably just look into, can we do this without having like a CAPI CRD? Like, for example, could we define having the infra machine pool machine as a provider contract and like expect that to be there and then use that directly in the autoscaler?
Seems reasonable, especially just to prove the point. Even if we were just going to do it as a POC to show how this would work, I think that seems like a totally reasonable path.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed taking notes on that. I can you rewind just a little bit for me?
Sure. So I think we just said another thing, like another alternative to look into is to add a provider contract instead of a different CRD in CAPI, so that we reuse the infra CRD across providers. But yeah, no matter what we do, we'll have to get some sort of agreement across providers, because right now we're doing this alone and we haven't, I mean, we've talked to the other folks who support machine pools like in Kappa and everything, but we still need some more official agreement of like how this is supposed to work so that we have consistency, because without consistency, we'll not be able to have a single cluster autoscaler approach.
So that sounds like it really will need a CAP to come to that agreement across the providers. And it could be useful to bring it in as an experimental feature in the CAP-Z, but it really will be experimental until the CAP is finalized.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments for machine pools?
I just want to say great work, David.
Thank you for all the support.
All right. As David said, please try it out if you get a chance before the release. We want to make sure we're giving it as much mileage as we can, given that this is pretty short in terms of timing. All right. Nader, want to talk about DNS issues? Ooh.
Yes. So I've had this issue for a little bit of time. Let me give some context. I have this PR that is trying to use the identity reference, so use like manage identity for all the end-to-end tests. So instead of just having a service principal and the environment variable, have an identity and go through the NMI, pod identity library, to do the authentication. And this one test has been failing, the private cluster test. And the special thing about this test is it's the only test that uses a management cluster that's running on Azure, not on Kind, because it creates the cluster, then creates a worker cluster, makes that a management cluster, and then uses that to create a private cluster. And because it's trying to create a private cluster in the same VNet, because it's private, so we had to make that a management cluster on Azure. And before it was worked, without this PR, it's working because it's not using NMI, so it's just able to create the cluster if it has a service principal. When it's using NMI, it's not able to authenticate when it's trying to create the private cluster, because NMI pod is supposed to be using host network. And when you're using host network, there's a bug in Calico with host network, with Calico VXLAN, and the kernel version that we're using, that is making DNS not work. If it's not using host network, it will work fine, because the rest of the cluster works. I have a link to the issue in Calico. I tried the workaround that they mentioned, it didn't seem to make it work. I know the kernel version that we have in our images is pretty old. It's like 5.4. This is supposed to work for 5.7 and above. So I don't know why we're using this kernel version and not a newer one, or if that's something we can change. I know Shyam had like investigation recently about some other kernel bug version, and he tried to generate with a newer kernel, like the other bug that I can't remember now, but it was also related to some networking. Anyway, this is the background. So the other fix that is coming in Calico, I updated all that stuff in the issue. The other stuff that is coming up in Calico, there's a fix coming, but it sounds like it should come in 3.20, which is coming in the next few weeks. So it's not released yet. So this is where this is. It's like an update. I was wondering if we wanna, if it's an option to update the kernel in our images, or we can wait for a Calico new fix, or just giving an update.
So,
all the links and issues and everything are in the PR.
To answer the kernel version question, the kernel version is the one that was there. That was the latest one at the time the image was built. And in this case, I think the tests haven't had an updated image for a while because we're still using an old Kubernetes version. And one of the reasons for that is that, like, I think first of all, we should probably update to the latest patch release of 1.19 because we're still on 1.19.7, and I think the latest is 1.19.11. And I think one of the open PRs, I think it was the managed cluster identity one, was doing that. We should probably do that separately and get that in sooner. And then the other thing is we haven't moved to 1.20, 1.21 because there's an issue with kubeadm in 1.20 plus where it tries to set the ephemeral storage requirements on the etcd pod, which causes us to have like really bad flakes for multi-control plane clusters because kubeadm join fails due to a kubelet race condition. That's the thing that Jack Francis brought up at the Cluster API office hours yesterday. So we could publish a new image with the same Kubernetes version just to get a fresher kernel. We could also add some pre-kubeadm or post-kubeadm command that updates the kernel. That is also a solution in that test, if you want to try that, just to see if that would fix your issue.
Okay, I can try that.
And then, yeah, Azure Stack HCI, Zach, you want to talk about that? What's the workaround?
Oh, no, I'm sure it was the same, like use like ETH tool to do something, right? Workaround. I'm trying to look it up in the. But yeah, we were working with like Tegra. What's the Calico parent company? How you pronounce that? Like Jocelyn on my team was working with them for a while. But yeah, we were hitting issue with no DNS resolution for host networking pods. It was fun. I'm trying to see what kernel version we're using.
Okay.
I don't have it right now.
The issue says that the Calico issue says anything before 5.7 has that issue. What we use is 5.4, I think, currently.
So I also saw somewhere on your PR that you commented something about some Calico PR that was going to fix it and that we should wait for the new Calico release.
They have a workaround to work with older kernels by setting a flag that will kind of skip the randomized problem. I can't remember the details, it's in the issue. So that is like a workaround to work with older kernels. That's coming in Calico.
Okay, then yeah, let's just try with the new kernel and see what happens. And so you could either update it in like apt like command in the cloud init, or you could also just use a newer Kubernetes version in your PR just to see if that fixes the test. It might introduce other problems which we're working on fixing separately, but at least to see if that's the solution. I think the latest one, latest 1.19 will probably have what you need, but if not, you can try the latest Kubernetes version that was published. I think since they all come in batches, like all 3 patches usually get released on the same day. We build them on the same day, which means that 119, 120, and 121 latest patch will probably have the same kernel version because they were built on the same day. So they took whatever was latest.
And also, Zach put a different workaround that I have not tried in the chat, so I can try that.
Okay, let me copy that to make sure we don't lose it. Oh, someone already did. Cool. Okay. In the meantime, would it make sense to like disable the Azure cluster identity on that private cluster test and merge the rest?
I mean, I don't know. Sure, it's up to. If you want this to happen before the release, we can. I mean, I don't think it's related to the release, so I don't know.
Okay, well, that actually brings me to my next point, which is you reminded me by saying the Azure cluster identity thing. We talked at some point about making multi-tenancy, like have the optional vars in Alpha 4 and then completely removing them in Alpha 5 or a better one. Do we still want to do that? If so, we should do that soon. So that means updating the cluster components template to have like that msubst. Actually, wait, do we have msub support in the cluster components? We did at some point because of Azure environment, right?
We took out the Azure, like the one that was called public cloud from the environment variables, and it's now on Azure cluster.
Right, but do we?
So that was like the main one. That was the reason why we had to have msubs. So we might not need it. I don't know if it's still there or not.
Okay, because if it is, we can do that like default to empty so that it can be optional. If it's not there anymore, if we don't have msubs available for the provider components, then I don't see how we can make it optional. Because the environment variable is either there or it's not. So, okay, I will check that.
Thanks, Cecile. I didn't know what to write.
Yeah, it's okay. I've just been saying a bunch of random words. Okay. I think, yeah, so in terms of like the testing of that, I was just thinking like it'd be nice if we can at least get some test data on like Azure cluster identity and not hold it for too long. But if you think that we can get the private cluster one fixed soon-ish, like I'm okay with waiting. It's just like, you know, if it's blocked, might as well get the other ones in there.
I can try the couple of workarounds today, and if I don't get to anything by the end of the day, I'll remove it for that specific test and make it ready for everything else.
Sounds good to me. Oh, note about the workaround. It needs to be executed on each node after the Calico pod is scheduled on said node. Huh. Okay, so that will be annoying indeed. Means we can't do it.
Yeah. How we kind of tackled this, we have a extra sidecar running with Calico in our deployment that basically does runs this command and then just sits there idly. Is the workaround, so you don't have to kind of go to each node at SSH in or something, because you can't even do like kubeadmin post.
Yeah, right.
You don't
That's not
know timing. You don't know timing wise when that Calico pod's gonna get executed, like scheduled there.
Sorry, where did you say your workaround was? How do you do this?
I mean, you would have to kind of then, take the Calico chart or YAML and edit it to, you know, include a sidecar pod that just runs this command.
Oh, okay. I'd be interested to know, Zach, like if you can check after the meeting, if you're like, but I imagine this workaround you applied a while ago while this issue was blocking, but if indeed it's fixed in new kernel versions, maybe your workaround isn't needed anymore. Like it'd be interesting to know if the issue still exists, even with newer kernels or.
Yeah, let me see. Actually, I have a new batch of, I guess, PhDs from Mariner teams. So they're probably on the latest kernel. So let me see what happens.
Okay. Cool, thanks.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Any last minute topics that anyone wants to bring up? Okay, I think we'll call it a day. Thanks everyone for being here and see y'all online.
Thank you all.
Bye.
I